Hello, everybody. It's Helen Hillix, licensed therapist, intuitive counselor, and the host for this summit, which is Sacred Sexuality Revealed, Passionate Intimacy, Deeper Connections, and Long-Lasting Desire. And I have the inimitable pleasure today of having as our expert speaker, Dr. John DiMartini, and I'm really, really happy to have him. I can't wait to dive in to talking about what's happening in the world today and how it relates to sacred sexuality. So I'll get back to him in a moment, but first I want to share just a couple of things about why I'm doing this summit to start with, and that is that I've had my own painful sexual history growing up in the sexual revolution and left me with a lot of shame that took years to overcome, and I don't want that to happen to you. And I also have been a licensed therapist for 35 years, working with hundreds, if not thousands, of people who have come into my office of every shape and size and, gender identity, coupled, uncoupled, and so many people struggle with the issue of sexuality and self-love and sexual shame. And so I want to have this summit, an ongoing series of summits, to help people support their consciousness and their healing around this topic. And as we are in the middle of a worldwide pandemic right now, I feel like it is even more important to talk about relationships. So let me tell you a little bit about Dr. DiMartini. He is a world-renowned specialist in human behavior, a researcher, author, and global educator. He's developed a series of solutions applicable across all markets, sectors, and age groups. His education curriculum ranges from corporate empowerment programs, financial empowerment strategies, self-development programs, relationship solutions, and social transformation programs. Wow. His teachings start at the core of the issue, addressing the human factor. The human factor range out to a multitude of powerful tools that have proven the test of time. So I want to welcome you with such an open heart today, Dr. DiMartini. What do you want me to call you to start out with?
That's fine. Whatever,
Okay.
All kind of things. They range just from one extreme to the other.
Okay, well, let's just dive right in. Why is it important right now that we continue to focus on sacred sexuality? Some people would say that is the stupidest thing I ever heard. I've got more pressing matters.
Well, right now, you have the coronavirus. The coronavirus has been around. That's not new. It's just one of a series of them that have come out. The corona, the corona radiata is a radiance of light around inspired individuals throughout the ages, thousands of years now. And primarily because of the protein radii that are sitting on the capsule of the virus, they've given that title. Under electron microscope, you can see this, and it has a corona. So that's always a sign of a sacred virus.
I love that.
So the purpose of it is I'm joking now, I hope people can understand it. The purpose of the virus is to stop people from what they're doing and giving them a chance to have sex. So right now, if there's some few people that are probably going to succumb to this, and their health is probably compromised anyway, and they may pass, but at the same time, there'll probably be a surge of new children born that'll be born during these challenging times. And they'll have time for love and intimacy sitting there at home with their family or single at home. So there's never a crisis without a blessing. And economically, there's going to be people that are going to take time off, and there's going to be people that are going to have some financial challenges. It's going to force them to learn how to manage their money and make sure they have cash reserves for these type of emergencies. So everybody's going to be upgraded into a more higher productive, higher prioritized, more intimate situation. People are going to have to force themselves to break through the limitations they've had in their relationship, because they're going to have time to talk and communicate again. So there's never a downside without an upside. And I'm counting all the blessings. A gentleman from Tokyo just sent me a letter, what's the upsides of this whole thing? And I said, and I gave him about 200 of them last night. I typed up 200 different upsides just to give him some things. And he went, wow, I never thought of this. You're right. So there are people who are run from the outside and become victims of history. And there are people that are called from the inside, become masters of destiny. Whatever challenges that come in, it's forcing us to actually prioritize what we're doing and live by the most highest important actions moment by moment, which is the most a human being can do. So I'm a firm believer that these are forcing us to be efficient, effective, and make us realize that the people that are important in our life that we may be taking for granted is now time to appreciate their contribution in our life, and forces us to unite as families and unite as partners and have time that we've been kind of griping about that we don't have time for. So there's an upside to it. So I'm not a believer that we should look at this as a terrible thing or a terrific thing, just another stage of life, giving us a new set of positives and negatives, a new set of challenges and opportunities. And I believe that the corona is a symbolism of light. So let's use it to enlighten ourselves and become more efficient and effective at what we do, including the communication with our loved ones, and allow us to have the intimacy. Intimacy, if you don't mind, I'd like to develop intimacy.
Absolutely, dive right into that.
You know, I've been teaching a program called the Breakthrough Experience for 31 years, going on 32 years. And I've done it 1,093 times.
Wow.
Many times. And one of the things that I find is that many times people are infatuated with people and confuse that with love, or resentful to people because they're not living up to the fantasy that they made when they were infatuated. And then they project their values onto other people self-righteously, or inject the other values into their life from others and try to live in those people's values. Anytime we try to get others to live in our values, or we try to live in other people's values, we're going to have a problem. But when you actually have equanimity within yourself, you're neither too proud or I'm not sure what happened here. Are you there?
Yeah, your internet just went out. That's fine. I wrote down the time. My editor will just blend these two together.
I'm in a hotel and I couldn't tell you why that went down. I just have no idea.
Hotels are notorious. Okay, so you were saying if you try to live in somebody else's, well, that you'd gone beyond that. You said if we have equanimity, that was the last thing you said.
Okay, so if we put people, if we infatuate with somebody, we're too humble to admit what we see in them is inside us, and we have a disowned part. If we resent somebody and look down on them, we are too proud to admit what we see in them is inside us. We have a disowned part. If we see them as equals, we're not too proud or too humble to admit what we see in others inside us, and we're being authentic, and we have equity between ourselves and them, and equanimity within ourselves. That allows us the perfect reflective awareness that allows true intimacy to occur. As long as we're looking up looking up at them with infatuation, we're going to inject their values into our life and try to sacrifice ourselves to be with them for fear of loss of them. If we're resentful to them and looking down on them, we're going to try to get them to live in our values and fear the gain of them. As long as we have equanimity and equity within ourselves, authenticity and equity between themselves and others, we have true intimacy. That's when we love somebody. And everything that's going on in our relationship is trying to teach us that. All the symptoms are either projections of our values onto others and trying to get them to live in our values, which doesn't work, or the injection of others' values into us and us trying to live in their values, which doesn't work. But learning how to connect and communicate what we value in terms of what they value works. So we have to respect another individual to know that they're a customer, and we need to communicate what we want in terms of what they want. And when we do, we have doorways of dialogue instead of alternating monologues. And that's when we have intimacy. And that intimacy is the sacred part of our life because it's authentic. And it's where we have an enlightened awareness of how magnificent they are and how we are in our journey together.
That blows my mind. That is such a succinct articulation of the dynamic between couples that you see every day, all day long. Is you're either infatuated with them and you try to seduce them into staying with you because you don't think you're worthy, or you are looking down at them and seeing them as not worthy and trying to get them to come up to you. And it's such a recipe for disaster. So do you have some ways, again, especially during this time when people are actually going to have time to practice, can you offer some tools that people might start with who are just opening their minds by listening to you about this dynamic that they can now see?
Yes, the first thing that I can encourage, on my website, there is a value determination process. It's complimentary, it's free, it's private. You can do it anytime, anytime you want, as many times as you want, but it's completely private. And what it does is it asks you 13 questions to help you decide and help you discern precisely what is valuable to you. Because a lot of times people are running around with shoulds and ought tos and supposed tos and got tos and have tos and must and imperative languages in their psyche, which are outer authorities whispering in their head about who they should be and how they ought to be. And so they basically have this internal conflict and confusion about their own identity, which is authentic, to these facades that they wear because they subordinate to outer authorities. Anytime we look up to people and we think that they have something we don't, we inject their values. So the value determination on the website is a concise 13-question, step-by-step process to help you filter through the illusions about who you are down to what is really valuable to you, what your life demonstrates. Because your decisions in life are based on what your values are. And that's the first step, identifying what your values really are. What is really priority to you? What's really important to you? What do you spontaneously do every day? Then you have the spouse or partner do the same. And they take the time to go online and get it, because when they do, it's eye-opening. I mean, I've been talking about values to people for 42 years, and I've only met one individual that knew their values. One in 42 years. Most people are hazy and clouded, and they have fantasies about what they think they want. If I ask people how many want to be financially independent, everybody puts their hand up. But if I look at what their life demonstrates, they want the lifestyles of the rich and famous, and they are basically spending their money on consumables that depreciate in value, which make them never get wealthy. So I basically have to explain to them that your delusion about who you are and what your life is demonstrating is hypocritical. You got to be really truthful about what you're committed to and what's important to you if you want to know, because whatever's highest on your value, your identity revolves, and you want to be loved for that. And if you don't know what that is, it's going to be hard to have a relationship with somebody. So first, identify that. The second step, that takes about 30 to 40 minutes of their time. And they may want to do it again and again just to make sure they didn't bullshit themselves. The next thing to do is to do a linking process. Because if you can't see what they're dedicated to and what they're spontaneously doing on a daily basis, and what's most important and meaningful to them is helping you fulfill what's important to you, you're going to want to change them. You're going to want to project onto them because you're going to be feeling challenged. You're going to get into self-righteousness. You're going to project on them. And you're going to expect them to live in your values and read your mind and do what you expect. And you're going to punish them You're going to have the anger and aggression and blame and betrayal and criticism and challenge and despair and depression and desire to exit and escape and frustration and futility, grouchiness and grief, hatred and hurt, irritability and insanity. I call it the FGHs of negativity, as a result of projecting onto them that they're supposed to live in your values. They can't. They live in their own values. So first identify what your values are. First identify what their values are. Then ask how specifically is what they're dedicated to helping you fulfill what you're dedicated to. And answer that question at least 30 times. And just keep asking that. How is what they're dedicated, what they spontaneously love, them going to work or them building their business, first them raising the family or whatever their values are, their spiritual quest, their yoga, their exercise program, their study program, whatever is meaningful to them, ask how is it helping you fulfill what's most meaningful to you? And answer that question. Don't lie. It's not. And that's why you need to fix them. No. Answer the question. Be accountable because they're not here to live in your values. You're going to destroy your relationship expecting them to. They're here to live in their own values. They want to be loved and appreciated for that. If you can't see how what they're doing that is helping you fulfill yours, you're going to end up wanting to fix them. And they don't want to be fixed. Anything you're not willing to do for your mate, you got to be willing to delegate. If you're not going to love them for who they are, they're going to find somebody else that's going to. And if they go out and have an affair, don't be bitching. You pushed them away with your expectations. But once you do that, then you go around and ask how specifically is what you're dedicated to, what your highest values are, helping them fulfill theirs. And make a link between the top 3 values of them to the top 3 values of you and make links, hundreds of links. This will take about 3 hours of work. But I'm telling you, that makes a vast difference. You finally get to appreciate who they really are instead of trying to fix them into who you think you want them to be. Because no one wants to be somebody they're not. They want to be who they are. They want to be loved for who they are. So that's it. It revolves around what they value most. So make the links between what they value. Those are crucial things if you want to have a dialogue and be able to feel free to talk. Otherwise, you're going to be walking around in eggshells, pussyfooting around with carefulness or judging somebody with carelessness instead of caring. And caring is what keeps the rings on the finger.
I love that. I'd like to see if this is an example of what you're saying. If, let's say the man works, this is very stereotypical, I know, but let's say the man works long hours and loves his job and is very committed to it. And the woman is more of she goes into yoga and breath work and spiritual transformation, and how those things actually feed each other, that she can be a leader to him in the bringing spiritual principles and, offering healing in a way that soothes his soul and helps him work better. And he provides her a lifestyle that allows her to do that. I mean, there are so many times I see clients where exactly the same thing, she's bitching about him working too much and he's bitching about her, doing her spiritual quest, when actually they can really support each other's evolution.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a lady one time, she said, I just can't handle it. My husband is just materialistic. All he does is work and make money. He's totally focused on the money. And I'm into spiritual things. And I said, okay, so what exactly is spiritual to you? Well, I do yoga and I do meditation and I do spiritual chants and I go, and do Zen sittings and this kind of stuff. And I said, okay, and so that's spiritual? And she goes, yeah. I said, well, what about his? His spiritual too. He goes and has, how many employees does he have? 200. So he's basically providing them jobs. He's helping them be able to raise their families. He's helping them put them through schools. He's paying taxes. And he's serving thousands and thousands of people across the world with his products and services. And that's a service, and that's spirituality. Being inspired by something is a spirituality in a different form. Yours is one form, his is another. And you're sitting there basically feeding off him, not working and not providing and isolating by yourself and talking to the universe yourself as one individual, not doing a lot of service to other people other than just focusing on your body and your mind and your soul. I said, so is really he less spiritual than you, or is you just got 2 different forms of spirituality? And she kind of got humbled. She says, you have a way with words. I said, so please note that they're both spiritual because what inspires them is their spiritual path. And no 2 people have the same values, and no people are designed to have the same values. They're unique. They're like fingerprints. And that the wisdom is knowing how to be able to take anybody on the planet and find out what their values are is serving you, because everybody's needed in the big picture.
I love that. And it fits right in with the whole concept of oneness, that we are all one. And that, all the different manifestations, if we look, we can see ourselves in everyone. And therefore, it eliminates all those artificial ego-defined separations. Would you talk about, because what flashed through my mind, Dr. DiMartini, was, when you were saying about spending this time doing the value determination, isn't this pandemic the unbelievably perfect time to do that? Is to really evaluate what's important to you.
Exactly. It's a prioritizer. I always say that if we don't take the time and fill our day with high priority actions that inspire us, it's going to fill up with low priority distractions that don't. We right now have the capacity to stop, reflect, look at what's really important to us. A lot of things we've been in the rat race doing that we think are important, we may find out were just things we were doing out of habit, not necessarily what's really priority. I have asked people, 1 million people at least, how many people, if they had only 24 hours to live, what would they do with their life? And every time they go share their love and appreciation to the people who contribute to their life. Well, now we got the time to do that. So that's got its upsides too. I think that's what's sacred. Sacred is the realization, as you said, that everything is one. I went into the Oxford Dictionary many years ago, over 30 years ago, and I went through, and that's a big, thick dictionary, if you probably remember it, if you've seen it.
Yes.
Very thin paper and very small print, very large dictionary. And I went through and I circled page by page. I'm neurotic, so I did this exercise. I literally circled every possible human behavioral trait I found on that dictionary.
That's amazing.
Kind, cool, nice, mean, positive, negative. I found 4,628 individual traits, behaviors, actions or inactions that we do, commissions, omissions, things that we do that we judge. I went through each one. Then what I did is I thought of who in my life is the most extreme example who exemplifies that behavior the most that I could think of. Okay. Then what I did is I put their little initial out on the side. I'm a neurotic guy. I just put a dot next to the word and then put a little initial of people. And then I went in there and I looked in my life and I asked myself, okay, go to a moment where and when I perceive myself displaying or demonstrating the same or similar specific trait, action, inaction that I perceive in this individual. And where is it? When is it? Who am I doing it to? And who perceives me doing it? And I went in there and owned all 4,628 traits. And I found out that I am nice and mean and kind and cruel and considerate and inconsiderate and honest and dishonest and deceptive and forthright. And I found that I had displayed every single friggin' trait. And I found out that the only things that people can push my buttons on that can cause emotional reactions in my relationships are the parts of myself that I'm unwilling to own and want to be in denial of. And the moment I owned all the traits, I had less to judge about others and more to open my heart to and realize that, oh, we're all in this the same. And my expectations changed. I also found out that the traits that I thought were terrible, I then asked, so what are the benefits of them? And the ones that I thought were terrific, what were the drawbacks? Because sometimes you think, oh, you get this new relationship and you go, oh, this guy's so handsome, he's so intelligent, he's so this. And then you find out weeks later that he's self-absorbed and he basically knows it all and he thinks he has to be right and he basically argues and he doesn't listen. And then you find out that the trait you admire has downsides and peccadillos, and the traits you despise has gifts of independence and strength and makes you challenge yourself and makes you grow and study and learn. And so there's no good or bad traits. There's just traits out there, behavioral traits and actions that serve you. And if you can see how it serves you, you can use it to your advantage. And you're not a victim of anybody on the outside. You're simply not taking command to own the trait and see how it serves you in the path.
You know, I absolutely love that. And two things I want to comment on. One is that I want to comment on your neurotic, quote unquote, quality that made you circle those 4,628 traits and do all of that exercise, the upside of that is that we all get to benefit from what you learned. I mean, it's just a perfect example of what we're saying is some people would say, oh my God, he's so OCD, he's a nutcase. And then on the other side, it's like, and wow, look what he learned and we get to benefit from. So I love that. And I love that the way you're talking about there are no good or bad traits. And everything that you're doing is talking about really diving into evaluating the way we look at the world and each other and all of the events of the world. It's all the same. It's like we want to judge it as good or bad, as right or wrong, when that is the thing that separates us from everything we want, which is the oneness. So I love that. And what a time to challenge ourselves to even say that the pandemic is not good or bad or right or wrong. It's not tragic. It's not, this catastrophe. It's both. That Chinese symbol that, depending on the context. Well, the yin and yang, but there's one symbol that is interpreted as catastrophe or opportunity, depending on the context. And I love that. That's what we have here.
Exactly. I always say that any trait, I've studied ancient scripts and ancient writings from thousands of years, tablets and things, and some of the same behaviors they had then are still here.
Of course.
And some have been labeled bad, but the reality is if they are here, they must serve a purpose or they'd go extinct. So the question is just because we don't see it because we got a narrow mind doesn't mean that it's not serving us. So we have to go digging deeper. I always ask, so go to a specific moment where and when you perceive this individual displaying or demonstrating the specific trait, action, inaction that you despise most about the person. Great. Now go in that moment. Now at that moment, from that moment forward till today, how specifically is this behavior serving you? How's it a benefit? What's the upside? How is it helping you fulfill your top values? How is it helping you spiritually, mentally, career, financial, family, social, physical? And if you sit down and honestly do it, which I've taken 100,000 people through, I guarantee you there's not anything that your mortal body can experience that your mortal soul can't love.
I love that. Would you say that again?
That's sacred lovemaking right there. Sacred lovemaking is not just limited to human beings. Sacred lovemaking is about every moment of every perception, about every experience in your life. And when you can do that, the person sitting next to you, you'll be in grace with.
I love that. Would you say that one phrase again, that anything that your human body...
Anything that you experience in your physical body, there's nothing you can experience in your physical body that your soul can't love. The soul is a state of unconditional love. It's the transcendent awareness where it's fully conscious, seeing the conscious and unconscious. If we're infatuated with somebody, we're conscious of the upsides. We're blind to the downsides. Our intuition is trying to make us aware of it, but we're ignoring our intuition.
Yes.
And then if we resent somebody, we're conscious of the downsides, unconscious of the upsides. And our intuition is saying there's got to be a purpose why this is happening. There's got to be meaning in this. Our intuition is always trying to reveal to us the unconscious to make us fully conscious. If we see both sides simultaneously, synchronously, we have love. Love is the synthesis and synchronicity of the complementary opposites that we've labeled. And it's the conscious and unconscious, as Jung describes, put together at the same time. And the soul is in an unconditional love. It's not looking up or down at things. It's just looking from a broad vista, a transcendent overview effect, where it just looks down and says, it's nothing but love. All else was illusion. And so you got to transcend your illusions, which are you're too proud to admit you have that and too humble to admit you have that, and actually get reflective and see that everything is not, nothing's missing in you. You have it all. And then you have an abundance in life.
I love the way you say things. I just love it. And, I wanted to ask you, it sounds like when you're saying that, if you can see the upside and the downside and you're conscious and, and you're listening to your intuition and all of this is happening together, that's love, that's soul recognition. And it makes me think that what you're saying is that love isn't quote unquote personal. It's really a transcendent acknowledgement of the oneness in each other.
Yes. The persona is the mask. So the personal love is usually infatuation with its dopamine and serotonin and its oxytocin and vasopressin. It's all these bonding addictions, fantasies. And people confuse, most people, when they come to the breakthrough experience, they actually think they know what love is. When they come there, for the first time in their life, they learn what love is. When they actually have a sacred moment and they realize with tears in their eyes that it's about integrating the two sides simultaneously and embracing both the ups and the downs, the ins, the outs, pairs of opposites. This fantasy love that people get addicted to that makes them, their blood flow going down to their genitals for the Canadian mounting reflex instead of the intimate heart reflex. They're basically confusing that little dopamine rush and that serotonin fantasy rush, which is the reason why we have a crush. The rush of serotonin is the crush that we face when the fantasy is broken. We get crushed. We're designed to. Our fantasies are designed to be broken so we learn to love. True love is embracing the two sides. And I can change the ratios of perceptions of people. I got to share a funny story. I'm doing the breakthrough experience, about to start the breakthrough experience in Sydney, Australia a few years ago. And this lady snuck in. We don't let everybody in until the last minute, when they come in. But this lady had snuck in. And she says, "Oh, Dr. DiMartini, I'm so glad I finally made it here. I've been waiting for a couple of years to come here, and I've saved up, and I'm going to be at this program. And I came here to find my soulmate." And I said, "Fantastic." And there was another guy that had snuck in also that was eating a breakfast mac. Kind of gross, overweight kind of guy, dressed kind of funky, And I said, "So you're looking for your soulmate?" She goes, "Yeah, I'm looking for my soulmate." And I said, "What about this guy over here?" She looked around like this, and she goes, "Oh, God, no, Dr. DiMartini, that's not my type at all." And I said, "Really? Are you sure?" And she said, "Well, no. I said, "Well, do you know who he is?" He goes, "No." I said, "Well, he's one of the wealthiest billionaires on the planet." She said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, he's incognito. We let him in early so people wouldn't recognize him. He's dressed down and he's acting like he's just an average guy, but he's one of the wealthiest men in the world. He's got planes and jets and homes around the world. He's got his own yachts. He hangs out with the A-list, all the presidents, prime ministers. I mean, he's like the top of the line. But we let him in. He's playing incognito today." He says, "Really?" And I said, yeah. He was once married to Michelle Pfeiffer, and one of her biggest regrets when they separated was that she goes, "My God, he was so dedicated to humanity and such a caring individual that I didn't feel worthy of him." And I just kept building this story around it, right? And then finally I said, "I need to go put my mic on." And she said, "Well, aren't you going to at least introduce me to him?" So what I did is I basically set her up for the realization that the ratios of perceptions determines the hormone ratios, and those hormones ratios make you attractive or repulsive. And hearing one thing can make you turn off by somebody or turn you on. And in literally 3-4 minutes, I made her all of a sudden interested in this guy who was just a schmuck that was sitting there in the seminar eating a breakfast mac, because her perceptions changed. And our ratios of perceptions we're accountable for. We're accountable for our perceptions, decisions, and actions in life. And it's nothing to do with the world on the outside. It has everything to do with our perceptions, decisions, and actions about that world. And if we can find out the hidden order in that world by asking quality questions and make us aware of what we've been unconscious of, we can discover that beautiful oneness and love that's always present, that's permeating the universe as an intelligence guiding human beings to maximum potential.
I'm not even going to try to respond to that one. I mean, it's so true. I mean, it goes back to what you said in the very beginning that, some of us are dominated by external forces and we become victims, and others of us are listening to that consciousness, the intuition, as you were saying, and we are going to be the leaders of the world. And it's like, that's what's happening right now is, that clarification of what's guiding you. That are.
If the voice, I said it, if the voice and the vision on the inside is not louder than all opinions on the outside, you're not going to master your life. But once it is, you can master your life.
And really, circumstances on the outside.
Those circumstances are your perceptions and projections. They're not real out there. They're just what you perceive. I've had people come in with amazing stories of what, I've been a victim of this, and I've been attacked like this. And I make them go and ask, "So what's the upside?" "Well, there is no upside." I said, "No. When you're in survival mode, you skew things with biases and make yourself blind, and you don't listen to your intuition. You shut off with impulse and instinct, and you go into survival mode. Let's be accountable, pass that by, and dig deeper and go inside." And all of a sudden, 10 minutes later, they're coming up with some of the benefits of this thing that they've been running a story about for years. And they go, "Oh my God, it's actually served me." And I said, "Yeah, the story you've been running is just a racket. The real truth is that there's something there to be grateful for. And if you stop and look and find it, you'll liberate yourself. Instead of going for years of therapy, you're going to end up going on to a point where you say thank you. And when you can say thank you, I love you, you're done. You now got the real truth. Because anything you can't say thank you for is your baggage. Anything you can say thank you for is your fuel.
I love that. It reminds me of my own journey with my husband, whom I met at 57, 13 years ago. And we were both on a spiritual path, but we had such different personalities, and we have been through hell. Absolute hell. First, there was the infatuation and the, oh my God, I can't have enough sex with you. And, you are the love of my life. And then there was, oh my God, you make me sick. You are so lazy, or you are so opinionated, or whatever it was. And, thank God we are both, you could say stubborn, but, the upside of that is dedicated to the journey. And we have come to this place that you're talking about of, his tendency to want to be more, lying down and resting compliments me because I am driven, and too out of my body. And it's like, it's so, I only mention this is, I have a personal example of exactly what you're saying. And it helps me to understand that, the end result is real love, is that we see the oneness in one another. And that is what we've been looking for all our lives. And, we're only 70 and 73, so we're getting it young in life.
Yes. Well, I was married to a lady named Athena. She passed away 15 years ago, but we were married. And when we first met, I was working 20 hours a day and sleeping 4. She was sleeping 20 hours a day and working 4. Perfect. That way I had plenty of time to get things done.
Exactly.
It's all part of the perfection of it. But we had one thing we had in common was sushi. When she get up, it's time for us to both eat sushi. But the magnificence of that is that, I was the left brain, she was the right brain. We had the complementations. We seek out of our ignorance and our childishness similarities. We seek that infatuation, dopamine. But nature smacks us with the other side to make sure we grow. Because we don't grow with similarities. We grow with the challenges.
Right.
And if we get support, we stay juvenilely dependent. If we get the challenge, we become precociously dependent. If we see both of them synchronously, we grow at maximum rates. Maximum growth and development occurs at the border of support and challenge, ease and difficulty, the pairs of opposites, prey and predator. So, yeah, when you finally realize that that's what true love is, it's not the dopamine rampage. It's not the infatuation, hump and pump and lick and stick phase. It's the... It's the realization that I like you. I like to think of it this way. When you're infatuated, you hug somebody. When you're resentful, you slug somebody. And if you hug and slug and hug and slug, it's kind of like a lovemaking match. And eventually you get to higher and higher and higher frequencies, and you eventually say, oh God, But it's the pairs of opposites that make up love. When we embrace both sides of each other, we can finally love somebody.
I love that. So would you talk just for a minute about your perception of once you get to that place where you are experiencing one another as full of that soul acknowledgement, and you realize that the love is the recognition of the oneness in one another, how does that support sacred sexuality? What does that look like if you're past the lick and stick? And that was hysterical.
The real lovemaking, I know this is going to sound weird. There's a passionary position, which is amounting like an animal, and there's the missionary position. And I don't mean to be Christian-like, but the missionary position where you look into each other's eyes, the windows of the soul, and there's a sacred moment where you don't really distinguish between you and them, and you don't know where space and time really is. And that sacred intimacy occurs only when you have no judgment. A perfectly equilibrated mind and equanimity has no judgment. The judgment is what closes the heart. And the second there's no judgment, the heart opens. And when the heart opens, the sacredness of the heart reveals itself in the communication. And there's a silence. There's just a golden silence where you're just in love, and there's presence there. And most people don't have that every time they are having sex, but they certainly have moments where there's a sacred sexuality. And that is a very profound and lasting impact on relationships. I think that's it. But most people have little FBs, they hump and pump like little rabbits occasionally. And that's okay too. I'm not going to negate that or judge that, but sacred sexuality is the moment you actually Give yourself permission to be authentic and love the individual as they are, not as you keep imposing how they're supposed to be. And when two people do that for just a moment, they synchronize that, it's a very special moment that they don't get. You don't just let that disappear in your mind. That's there. It accumulates as an awareness, love, and wisdom.
I love that, and I've felt that. I mean, my husband and I do a sacred ritual every time we're going to be sexual, and we have had the experience on numerous occasions, even before we're having genital contact, of really just crying because we're looking at each other and seeing the God in each other. And I don't
Yes.
mean that in a religious way, but it's exactly.
No, it's not an anthropomorphic deity. It's a panpsychic presence that permeates all of us, that we recognize because we're graciously aware of that magnificence at that moment.
A panpsychic presence. Love that. I really love that. So what else would you like to say to people right now? I feel like we're coming to the end of our time, and I just, is there something specific on this day in this time that you'd like to say?
Well, like I said, every human being wants to be loved and appreciated for who they are. Their identity revolves around what they value most. My highest value is teaching, and so my identity revolves around teacher. If people can love me as a teacher, great. Some people's values are about raising kids. Some are about spiritual activities of some form, meditation. Some people are about football and sports, and some are business, and some are academics. But whatever's highest on their value, that's what their identity revolves around, and they want to be loved for that. So finding out what that is, as I said in the beginning, and finding out how it serves you, and see how them being exactly the way they are, how it serves you. When you can see that every single thing that pushes your button, how it actually serves you, taking the time to care enough about your partner to find out at everything that you think is in the way, how is it on the way, and liberate yourself from the self-righteous projection of how you think they're supposed to be instead of honoring who they are. Because when you love people who they are, they turn into who you love. That's the bottom line. But when you try to project onto them and fix them, so many people are going, well, this guy I think I can fix. I'm going to go and join this relationship. I know after 60 years, I'll finally get him fixed, and trained. But the reality is that also you want to make sure that you realize that anything you're not willing to do to fulfill what your mate is doing, you got to be willing to delegate. And that shocks people, but you got to realize that there's the law of the one to many. When you're dating many, you're looking for that special one. When you got the one, you're wondering about the many. And it's always an oscillation between the one and the many. And in the process of doing that, you want to make sure you have one close, intimate partner for your intimacy, but you also want to have friends that fill in the gaps of things that aren't important in your mate's life. So you have a way of outletting things that are important to you with other friends and not expect it from the mate all the time. Otherwise, you're going to want to fix the mate instead of love the mate. And that's what undermines the relationship. But just realize that your friends in social life are entwined with a relationship. And sometimes when you're doing really well in business, you may be having challenges in the relationship. Other times you may be doing really well in the relationship, but your business may be suffering. Know that there's nothing missing. It's just changing form. I learned it when I was 14 years old when I hitchhiked to California and back in the 60s, because I'm going on 66, so I understand this. I left my family there and I went off to California and I met this 27-year-old chick. I was 14 at the time. And she allowed me to come and stay with her. And she had a son that was taken away from her from a marriage. And she was trying to get the son back. He was 4. And if you took the son's age and the husband's age that she had and put them together and divide by 2, I was that age. So she was taking care of me like a mother, but was also making love with me in the evening like a girlfriend. And I was exactly the age, if you took, I was the age between those two, and she was the age between my mother and my average girlfriend. So she was acting like a mother and also taking care of me, and I was acting like a son and acting like a husband. And I realized that nothing is ever missing. And if we realize that nothing's ever missing, we're more adaptable, we're not desperate, we're not projecting, and we're not sitting, searching, we're just present. And to realize that nothing's missing. At the level of the soul, nothing's missing. At the level of our senses, where we judge, we think things are missing because we're judging and we're projecting and injecting ideas and values of others and ours onto others. If we just love people for who they are, they turn into who we love. That's the key.
I love that. And I also love leaving our audience today with the idea that nothing is missing. I mean, I feel like, right now people are so focused on the missing, what they're, that there's going to be a toilet paper shortage, or, I'm not going to get to see my boyfriend for a while, or whatever it is. It's the obsession with what is missing. I'm not going to have enough money. I mean, rather than just saying, okay, if nothing is missing, what do I have? What can I connect to? What can I appreciate? What can I be blessed by?
Yep. Well, I always say that the things are in different forms. Money comes in many forms. Some people have money in the form of beautiful children. And if you gave them $1 million, they'd say, no, I'll keep my children. Unless they're teenagers, then they'd give them away for a good deal.
Right. They'd pay to have them taken away.
Yeah. But some people have their wealth in the form of children. Some people have their wealth in the form of intellectual property. Some have it in the form of their looks. Some people have it in the form of their social connections. Some have it in the form of their spiritual awareness. Some have it in their business that they haven't sold. There's many forms of financial, but it's just moving around, and your values are determining the form. And if you don't have a reserve of capital, it's because you put your form of money in those other forms. And now you can draw upon that like a bank and bring those into creativity and do that with connections and turn it back into cash. And this is a perfect time to get creative and to convert other forms of wealth into those forms that can be useful in society. So there's always an opportunity if we take the time to look. But if we wallow on our pity party and trauma drama and hold dumb doldrums and have digital craniorectalitis syndrome, we don't go anywhere. We have to go and dig inside and find out how everything is on the way, not in the way.
I love that distinction, how things are on the way and not in the way. I really love that. So I want to just keep focusing on what you were said a minute ago of nothing is missing, and, using that this is an opportunity to do all the things that Dr. DiMartini has said today. And I've taken 4 pages of notes during our talk. I mean, that's how many, and I only write down what I think is really, really important. So it's unbelievable the number of things that you've said in this short time, and I really appreciate your wisdom. Would you please tell us how to get in touch with you and ways that people can...
The easiest way to get a hold of me is simply go to my website, drdemartini.com, DrDemartini.com. And on there is just an educational experience. You can go on there and go look on all the media. We've done thousands and thousands and thousands of media interviews. There's educational videos. There's YouTube videos. It's educational. And there's events around the world, although that right now I'm doing online events because we've, because of the thing, they could do a shutdown on flights and stuff. So I'm just getting to do online events and getting to be more online than ever before. And so, yeah, if they can go on there, they can take advantage of the value determination process and all the education that's there. They could spend the rest of their life in there, and they'd have to be a Buddhist and believe in reincarnation to keep up with what's on there.
I love that, which is a perfect manifestation of your highest value, which is a teacher.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got, you manifest absolutely directly right onto your website. So thank you so much. And, I'm just sending you tons of chi and support for your journey and all of our journeys, because we're all in this together.
Yes, thank you. And exactly, we're united in the world by one common thing, and it's the love virus, the coronavirus, the one that has light around it.
Yes.
The sacred virus. We'll call it the sacred virus in the future. A lot of love making going on.
And who knows, we indeed may do that, and say, thank God this virus came, because look how it changed the world.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a surge soon. Another few months we'll be surging again.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dr. DiMartini, and bless you for all the work that you do, because it benefits me and everybody else.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on your show. I appreciate it.